Okay, number 9. Write a SQL statement that shows how many employees work in the New York City and Denver locations. Display location, city, and total employees. So I think what they're looking for here is not a combination of New York and Denver, but list both New York and Denver. Display location, city, and total employees. All right. Access, create, query design, close, paste. Okay. So let's start with what we select. We want location, city, and total employees. So to get total employees, we're going to do another calculated field. In this case, the function is called count. And the question I have for you is, which field should we count? So here's how it works. If I want to count up the number of employees at each location, obviously we're going to need to look at the employee table to count up individual people. We're going to need the location table to refer to just those locations. But which field do I count? Do I count something over here in the location table? Do I count something in the employee table? Well, here's the rule. You want to count any field. To get a count of the number of rows, you simply want to choose a field that is never going to be blank. So for example, if I were to count performance, let's say Bill Marlin worked at New York, and I did my count function on the performance field, it would not count Bill because it's empty and my count would be off. Similarly, if Tracy Coulter was in Denver and I counted gender, I would miss her. So what field is never going to be blank? The primary key. The primary key can never be blank, and it's possible you may have set up some other fields to not allow null or blank values, and so you can use those as well. But my point is, it doesn't matter if the field is numeric or text. The count function will work on either, whereas other functions like the average that we did in the previous problem, clearly that'll only work on numeric fields. But for count, to be safe, we usually just want to include the primary key of the table that's going to represent the account we're looking for. So let's close that out, close location. Let's count up SSN as total employees from employee location. Always do our join first, employee dot location ID equals location dot location ID. And not only do they need to be joined, we only want those who work in New York or Denver. So let's say, and all right, location city equals, we better make sure that this is exactly how New York appears and it's not New York City or something like that. It is New York City. Okay. So let's make sure it looks the same. So they can work in either of those. So I'm going to say, or location city equals Denver. Now, you may recall, well, actually, let's finish this one out first, and then I'll bring this up again. Lastly, what do we want to group by? Okay, hopefully you remember from the last problem, but if you don't, the rule is any field in our select statement that doesn't have a formula being used on it, or that's not being calculated, has to appear down here in the group by statement. So we only have one, location city. So I'm just going to say group by location city. Does it say to order it? No, it doesn't. All right, so here's the problem we're going to run into. Let me do this and run it first. Okay, Denver 25, New York 4. Is that correct? Denver sounds high. Let's take a look at location. Denver is number 6 for location ID, and because I've got the relationship set up, I can click this and see, oh, there's only actually 2 people who work in Denver. How about New York? 4. My results, looks like New York is right, Denver is wrong. Where's this 25 coming from? Well, there are actually 25 total employees. So for some reason, whoops, come on. There we go. It's giving me all employees as working in Denver. Okay, if you watched the previous video, I started explaining this problem. Maybe you'll remember. What's happening here is it's saying this or right here is the culprit. So and is like, if you remember your order of operations from algebra, it's kind of like a multiply or divide where that has to happen first, meaning it's going to tie these two things together. It's going to make sure both of these are true. So 1, tie the fields together, interjoin, and make sure they work in New York. And that's why the New York count is correct, is because it's performing this join when it's getting the New York value. But OR says ignore everything else above this. Nothing else has to be true. Only this has to be true. So give me all of these and give me, or add to it, anything that just meets that criteria, ignoring the join. So how do we fix this? Well, turns out we can use parentheses in SQL just like you do in algebra to force certain operations to happen before others. So here's what I like to do. I like to say, okay, this join has to happen no matter what. And there's always an AND statement after the last join. So what I do is throw a parenthesis around everything after that AND that comes after the last join statement. Now in this case, there's only two tables that need to be joined, so there's only one join statement to put them together. But if I had three tables, I would have this and another join, and then another and I would put the parentheses after that next and. We'll do some more practice on this a little bit later, but this forces either one of those to be true, so it has to be New York or Denver, and now this always has to be true. So it's saying no matter what, either one of those has to be true, and that has to be true every time. So run it. There we go, Denver 2, New York 4. This is probably one of the trickier things to understand, so we'll do a few more examples of this before we're done.